Hey, what's up, food fans? Kino here, and welcome to the first episode of my brand new series, Cooking with Kino. Now, since it's around the holiday times, I thought this would be the perfect occasion to make one of my all-time favorite dishes from my favorite show of all time. Today, we're going to be making baked ziti from The Sopranos. And to help us along with that, I've got this. The Sopranos Family Cookbook. This is an officially licensed book that ties into the Sopranos franchise that I got for my birthday. It has a ton of classic Italian-American dishes in it, and we're going to take a look at this later. Now, the recipe that I'm going to be making today is inspired by this book, but it also has a lot of my touches on it as well. This is a dish I make for myself and my loved ones all the time. So, without further ado, let's get into the cooking. This is baked ziti. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is add a little bit of oil to your pot. This will help the meat get started. I've got 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of ground pork. Add it to the pot and set it over medium heat. I try to break up any big clumps of meat, but it'll be easier to break them up once they've cooked a little bit. While that starts to cook, I'll chop 1 yellow onion. To chop these, cut them down to length middle-wise, then chop off the root ends. Peel the outer layer off, then slice them into long wedges. Afterwards, cut across the slices to dice them into small pieces. I obviously don't have the greatest knife skills in the world, but it doesn't matter if you go slow. I'll go ahead and give the meat a stir as well so it doesn't burn. You can see that once it's started to cook a little bit, it's easier to break up with a spoon. I'll go ahead and chop my garlic now. You can go about this a number of different ways, but I like to cut off the end, smash them with my knife, and then slice them thin. Again, they're going to get cooked so long, it doesn't really matter what size the pieces are. At this stage, the meat is really starting to get going. Be sure to stir it frequently so nothing burns. As you can see, I got a little bit of burning right here, but it's not a big deal because I'm going to cook this very dark. Also, be sure to scrape up any fond at the bottom of the pot. That could burn if left unattended. While all this is going, I'm going to start to open my cans of tomato sauce. You're going to need them quickly when the fond is about to burn, as we use the tomato liquid to deglaze the pot, so open it up ahead of time. Let the meat cook until it's a deep brown flavor. That's when it gets really good. This can't happen until we evaporate all the water from the meat. As you can see here, there's still a lot of water left in the pot. So keep going until it's nothing but fat. Then the meat will start to fry and go deliciously crispy. You should be able to smell when the meat is like this. It will smell really good. Once you reach that stage, you can go ahead and add your onions. Now, if you wanted to caramelize your onions, you're going to need to take the meat out and cook them separately. But given that these are just going to melt over the long cooking time, I don't think it's necessary. I just throw them in. Once those are mixed in, you can add your garlic to fry. Once that's in, you can add a big squeeze of tomato paste. This will add a lot of concentrated tomato depth to the sauce, much more than just your regular cans of tomato. It will burn quickly though, so give it a stir for a few seconds, then get ready to deglaze. Now this isn't necessary, but if you've got some red wine, you can deglaze with that. But I don't think it adds a whole lot to the dish honestly, so feel free to skip. Stir, 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 and scrape up all that good fond from the bottom of the pot. Once that's done, you can go ahead and add your tomato sauce. I have 2 cans of crushed tomatoes for this recipe. I don't like my sauce too soupy, so I try to limit how much liquid is added to the pot. I also like a high meat to sauce ratio, but you can of course add more tomatoes if that's what you like. Be sure to stir everything around to get it evenly distributed. And once that's done, this sauce is pretty much good to cook for a few hours on medium-low heat. Be sure to stir it occasionally, though, to make sure nothing sticks to the bottom and burn. Also, you can add pepper to taste at this stage, but be conservative about the salt because we're going to add a ton of salty cheese later. Now, while we're waiting for the gravy to cook, I thought we could take a deeper look at the cookbook. Now, the cookbook itself is written as if it was written by Artie Bucco. This is supposed to be a cookbook within the universe of The Sopranos. That being said, there's a lot of pictures inside of it, like this one of Livia, setting her mushrooms on fire, that I'm like, where did they get the picture for this in universe? Now, in reality, the book was written by Alan Rucker. Hopefully you can see that right there. Now, you guys might remember that name because when I reviewed the Sopranos video game Road to Respect, that was also written by Alan Rucker as well. I believe he was one of the writers or maybe the main writer on that video game, but he's written a lot of Sopranos tie-in media, including this cookbook. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of different recipes in this book. This is the Sunday gravy that I'm making right now. Although I made mine a little bit different, I didn't make the meatballs, which I thought would be a little bit more difficult for this video. But it's got all the steps and ingredients listed out here. And as you can see over here, this is the one I actually really want to make. It's called Baby Octopus in Tomato Sauce. I don't know how you pronounce that in Italian. But if I skip over here, you can see that there's not just recipes written in here. There's actual excerpts written from the characters. This one is a discussion that's supposed to be with Junior. Now, I will admit that some of the excerpts don't really sound like they were written by the characters. This is supposed to be Junior's words that Artie wrote down. This one, pretty good. There's other characters that don't sound nearly anything like them. I'm trying to find the one with Janice here. What page is that on? Oh yeah, Sunday Dinner with Janice. This one, it's written in very purple prose. Life's like a dream, a distant fog-strewn fantasy. And I could kind of believe that's from Janice, but it sounds maybe a little bit too smart for her and what she would say. But it's cool that there's all these excerpts from the characters in this book. Again, this one's from a letter from Livia that he included in here. So it's not just a recipe book. It's also, like I said, a little bit of Sopranos tie-in media that you can enjoy, even if you don't necessarily want to cook any of these dishes. It's still an officially licensed piece of Sopranos work. And supposedly this stuff is canon because it's officially licensed. Now, one of the smart things they did is they didn't actually include anything from Tony in here. So the premise or the conceit of this page is Tony is both camera shy and print shy. So this isn't Tony actually speaking, it's Artie speaking about Tony. And that's good for a number of reasons. One, it makes sense that Tony wouldn't want to be recorded in any way, shape, or form, even just for a cookbook that Artie's putting out. But it also gives the writers an excuse not to have written in Tony's voice, which, as the main character, that would be one of the most difficult things for him to get right. Again, this is a picture from the pilot episode when Tony passes out. There's no way Tony would ever give permission to have this picture in a published book. So, again, the pictures are just screenshots from, or, still images from the show, just taken from the episodes itself. But there is a lot of great, pictures of the dishes they make in this recipe. Now, I started with baked ziti from this book because it's, one of the most iconic and classic dishes from The Sopranos, but there's a whole bunch of new stuff in there that I really would like to try out and film for future episodes. I mean, after all, Binging with Babish basically became a millionaire from making food from television shows, and I thought I might cash in on that a little bit too. So expect more of those in future Cooking with Kino videos. After cooking for a few hours, your sauce should have evaporated a ton of water and be much thicker. As it cooks down, the taste will become a lot more concentrated and strong, and you can taste it to determine when you like it. Now let's talk about the different pasta options you have for this dish. Now, of course, this is ziti. This is what we're referring to when we refer to baked ziti. And as you can see, the surface of this pasta is very smooth. And for that reason, a lot of people instead choose to use rigatoni instead of ziti. The reason for that is because this pasta has a textured surface that allows the sauce to cling to it easier. So a lot of people use rigatoni and still call it ziti. Really, it's up to you. Either one will work fine. But in this case, I am going to be traditional, and I'm going to go ahead and use the ziti. Bring a pot of water to boil. Be sure to heavily salt the water to season the pasta. Dump in your pasta and stir it around to make sure that they don't stick. The package should tell you how long to cook the pasta for, but we're going to undercook this pasta because it's going into the oven later. The package recommends 10 to 11 minutes, so I'll be cooking it for about 7. While that's cooking, I'll prepare my basil. I've got about 6 fresh basil leaves that I'm going to chop up here. You could have added this to the sauce, but I prefer to add it directly to the pasta so that it stays fresher. Next, I'll dice up my mozzarella. You could shred the mozz or even grate it, but I like to have large chunks of gooey mozzarella inside the pasta. Once the pasta is done cooking, drain it in a colander in the sink. Now, I'm going to try the trick that Ralphie recommended, where you mix the sauce directly with the pasta and some butter so that the pasta absorbs the sauce. I'm just doing it in a bowl because I don't want to cook the pasta anymore, and I'm not really sure if this is doing anything, but it can't hurt. I'm also going to mix in some of the mozzarella and parmesan directly into the pasta here. Now, the recipe book calls for ricotta cheese. I normally don't like ricotta, but I decided to add it here because we're trying to be more authentic. However, it made the pasta a little too creamy for my taste, but it's up to you. I'll also add the basil here as well. Once that's done, we can begin layering our pasta. Start with a layer of sauce at the bottom for lubrication. Then scoop in a layer of pasta. Spread some mozzarella around the dish. Again, these chunks will be really good once they've melted. Then I like to grate a layer of parmesan over everything. Then just repeat. Sauce, pasta, cheese. As many times as you can fit into your baking dish. No matter what though, I like to finish with a layer of parmesan. That goes nice and golden brown in the oven. Speaking of which, go ahead and transfer your dish to the oven and bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes to an hour. I'm baking it uncovered because again, I don't like it soupy and I want to evaporate more water, but you can cover it with foil if you want. After baking, take it out and let it rest for about 15 minutes so it can solidify. I was trying to wrap up filming, so I started plating early, but you can see how gooey and stringy the cheese is still. Once you've got a big serving, I also like to add another layer of grated Parmesan just for looks. Now to go along with this delicious meal, we need a drink. Now, if you're a Furio kind of man, you'll pour yourself a nice glass of wine. But if you're a Tony kind of guy like me, then there's nothing that goes with pasta quite like a nice tall glass of milk. And that's my baked ziti dish. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the first episode of Cooking with Kino. And thank you to the Sopranos Family Cookbook for all your inspiration. And stay tuned for more episodes of Cooking with Kino coming soon. So there is fucking ziti after all. Obscracy Media, Daz J. Kit, Sam Cedarland, Celery Man, Jenna Marie Johnson, Brad Smith Studios, Uncle Mike, Shane Boyce, and Matt Joyce.